Now to a humanitarian crisis in the world's newest country. Thousands of refugees from Sudan are fleeing across the border into South Sudan. South Sudan separated from its northern neighbor last July, and since then, Sudan has waged war on its own people. Many believe the Arab state is trying to force out the African population, but the conflict has gone largely unnoticed because it's in one of the world's most remote and dangerous areas. In a Canadian first, CTV's Kevin Green took his camera inside the Ida refugee camp to document what's happening.
Driven from their homes in the Nuba Hills by attacking Sudanese forces, hundreds of refugees arrive daily at this camp just across the border in Ida, South Sudan.
It was very difficult. You had to carry children on one of the soldier, and some on your back. And it was a very terrible journey.
There are now over 30,000 refugees in this camp. The United Nations doesn't want these people here. It says this camp is too close to the border, too close to the conflict. And in fact, it won't even call this an official refugee camp. It calls it a transit camp. And what that means is the UN won't supply long-term aid, things like agricultural supplies and education. That means much of the work in this camp is done by NGOs, the largest of which is the Christian aid group Samaritan's Purse.
The international community is only now starting to bring in the necessary supplies in terms of food and medical support and other things that people need.
Many of the children showing up here are sick, near death. Tiffany Young manages the Samaritan's Purse clinic, treating them. Right now there are 24 children in her care, but the camp's population is expected to triple this year, pushing her clinic past capacity.
We could probably right now take up to maybe 40 inpatients, but I think if it was above that, we're not prepared for that.
In fact, this whole camp can barely handle the people it's already got.
This is a difficult place to live in because it's not set up for 30,000 people to live here. There's just enough water for the people that are here, probably just enough. There's not enough sanitation facilities.
Despite that, the Nubian refugees continue to stream across the border, heading to this camp because, for all its hardships, it's a better place than they left. Kevin Green, CTV News, Ida, South Sudan.
And tomorrow, Kevin will show us how that conflict is affecting the children in the camp and what's being done to help them.
It's a newly formed country, and refugees are piling up along the border. Yesterday, we gave you a look inside a camp near South Sudan. When the region declared independence from Sudan last year, the northern country began a bombing campaign. The area is rich in natural resources and oil, but many believe the attacks are actually racially motivated. And now many of those fleeing south, hoping for a better life, are children with no families. Kevin Green reports.
In a camp of over 35,000 refugees, these are the most vulnerable. Thousands of children forced to flee without their parents when the Sudanese army bombed their villages.
I came out of the village, and that village was burned, and the journey on the way, we had no food, we had no water, and we just moved, and life was very tough.
Samaritan's Purse is the lead NGO in this camp. It manages this compound for 561 young girls who arrived without their parents. Without their protection, they're easy targets for abuse.
There's risks of violence against the girls because they have no family structure to protect them, which is what is normal in the camp. So anyone roving or anything like that, they have no protection from that.
In many cases, the children were in school when the attacks began, and entire classes began their trek to safety, guided by their teachers. Here in the Ida refugee camp, classes have started again. Even with the protection of NGOs like Samaritan's Purse, this is a rough life for a child. They're often alone and a long way from home, but it's better than living in a war zone.
And so as bad as a refugee camp can be, it's not a place where people are trying to shoot you or kill you or rape you just because you're there.
There are also adults in this camp who've been forced to make some of life's most agonizing decisions to save a child.
I came with one, and the other one I've just left.
You left the child behind?
Yes.
NGOs working here say governments around the world need to intervene to halt the conflict that's driving refugees to this camp.
There is a role that our Foreign Affairs can play, and our Minister of Foreign Affairs can play in terms of placing pressure upon the government of North Sudan to stop the bombardment and make this a safe place for these people to be able to live.
In the meantime, NGOs are scrambling to drill enough wells for the ballooning refugee population and rushing to fill these tent warehouses with food supplies before the weather changes. Seasonal rains are expected to hit here within days, and that will slow the fighting in the Nuba Hills, but it won't slow the flow of refugees to this camp. And it's a double-edged sword because the same weather that will prevent the warplanes from flying will also prevent the planes from delivering aid to this camp. Kevin Green, CTV News, Maban, South Sudan.
Tomorrow, Kevin takes us inside a refugee camp hospital. We'll meet the doctors trying to stem the flow of injured and sick people filling the South Sudan camps. We continue our look tonight inside the refugee camps near South Sudan. Our Kevin Green is the first Canadian reporter allowed in, and tonight we explore a refugee camp hospital. Despite the almost insurmountable problems with operating a hospital in a remote war zone, doctors there are saving lives.
There are over 90,000 refugees in Maban, South Sudan. People here have been forced from their homes in the north by a relentless bombing campaign directed by the Sudanese army.
For one day, they are bombing for 7 bombs on one day. My 2 sisters is killed by Antonov.
There's only one fully serviced hospital here. Inside operating room 1, everything from gunshot wounds to C-sections.
We work like 24 hours sometimes, and you come and there is no change. That you don't have other doctors to come in. Surely we need we need some doctors to come and help.
Less than an hour after delivering a baby by C-section and barely conscious, the only place available for this mother and her baby is a thin blanket on a dirty cement floor.
He's crying. Malesh. We are actually overwhelmed by the number of patients we are admitting. The numbers are bigger than the space available and even the beds available. We are in the process of trying to acquire beds and mattresses.
Despite the problems, this hospital has a remarkable recovery rate. Staff here are hailed as heroes by the refugee population, and they credit the NGO Samaritan's Purse for turning what was once just a clinic into a life-saving surgical facility.
This facility, before arrival of Samaritan's Purse, had no doctors, had no laboratory services, had no surgical capacity.
Refugees in this camp don't want to be here. They're forced to be here by circumstances beyond their control. Innocent victims in a war over race, religion, and resources.
She never imagined that one day she can live as a refugee.
And she hopes to go home again one day, but like everyone here, she can't do that until the government of Sudan stops attacking its own people. Kevin Green, CTV News, Maban, South Sudan.
If you're looking for a way to help out the relief agencies working there, we've got information on our website, ctvcalgary.ca.